Hey there, focused learners, and welcome to this explainer. Quick question for you. How many times have you checked your phone today? Seriously, think about it. Well, don't worry, I'm not going to make you answer out loud. Today, we're cutting straight through all the static and the noise to look at the devices we literally never leave home without. We're going to reveal exactly how our smartphones are impacting our health, and to do that, we're going to completely separate the physical reality of the hardware from the cognitive impact of the software. It's a completely fascinating paradox, and honestly, by the time we wrap this up, you're going to see your daily digital habits in a totally new light.
All right, let's just dive right in and address the elephant in the room, shall we? Are our smartphones killing us? It's that widespread, lingering public anxiety that simply holding a cell phone up to your head might be giving you a brain tumor. It's a fear that's been bouncing around for decades now. I mean, we're carrying around these incredibly powerful little radio transmitters right in our pockets, so naturally we want to know, are these things slowly killing us?
And look, let's be real, this is a completely valid concern. As the National Cancer Institute points out, because pretty much everyone on the planet uses these things, and because we routinely hold them directly against our heads, even a microscopic increase in cancer risk would be an absolute global health crisis. The scientific community didn't just brush this fear under the rug. No way. They took it incredibly seriously and poured millions of dollars into studying the whole shebang over several decades.
Section 1. The truth about radiation. So what is actually coming out of your phone's antenna, and how does it interact with the cells in your body? Well, it turns out all radiation is definitely not created equal, and this brilliantly illustrates the difference. On one side, you have high-energy ionizing radiation. We're talking things like X-rays or cosmic rays. Those pack enough of a punch to actually knock electrons right out of atoms, which is what damages your DNA and leads to cancer. But on the flip side, we have the low-energy, non-ionizing radiation emitted by cell phones and Wi-Fi. The radio frequency waves your phone uses, they simply do not possess enough energy to damage your DNA. The only scientifically established biological effect of this non-ionizing radiation is a very, very slight heating of the tissue near the phone. And we're talking not even enough to raise your core body temperature.
But you know, scientists didn't just rely on the physics. They went out and tracked humans, a lot of humans. Just take a look at this massive mountain of epidemiological data. The Interphone study spanned 13 different countries. The Danish cohort tracked over 358,000 subscribers, and the Cosmos study, that followed over 260,000 people. Tracking hundreds of thousands of individuals across decades has shown absolutely no conclusive link between cell phone use and brain cancer. In fact, while mobile phone use absolutely skyrocketed from the 1990s onward, the incidence rates for brain cancers in the adult population have remained remarkably stable. It's wild.
Now, you might have heard somewhere that the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified cell phone radiation as possibly carcinogenic, and it's super important to objectively clarify what that actually means. That Group 2B classification was largely driven by studies on rodents, like the ones from the National Toxicology Program and the Ramazzini Institute. They did find a small number of rare heart tumors in male rats, but, and this is a huge but, keep in mind these rats were basically living inside a giant antenna 19 hours a day for their entire lives. However, because the overwhelming human data tells a very safe story, top health agencies like the FDA and the NCI continue to assure us that current safety limits for cell phones are perfectly acceptable for protecting public health.
Section 2. The real threat, brains.
Okay, so if the hardware and the radio waves aren't the pressing danger we thought they were, we really need a paradigm shift here. Let's pivot our narrative entirely away from the physical hardware and point it instead right toward the software. Because guys, while we were looking for physical tumors, our devices were fundamentally altering our cognitive health and brain development. Just consider this staggering number, 63.6%. According to the massive Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study, which is literally the largest long-term study of brain development in the US, 63.6% of children already own their very own smartphone by age 11. We are handing incredibly potent digital tools to kids whose brains are right in the absolute thick of critical developmental phases.
Now, what's really interesting here is what researchers found when they compared kids who got a smartphone by age 12 with kids who didn't. The data clearly shows that acquiring a smartphone in early adolescence is directly linked to higher rates of depression, obesity, and insufficient sleep. The researchers found that the kids without smartphones actually experienced significantly better mental health outcomes just 1 year later. And get this, it didn't even matter if the kids had an iPad or a tablet at home, the specific trigger was having their own smartphone.
To really understand why this happens, we have to break down the biological vulnerability of a young brain. We need to look closely at the prefrontal cortex.
This is the region of your brain that handles complex decision-making, impulse control, and reasoning. But here's the catch. The prefrontal cortex is one of the very last parts of the brain to mature. It actually continues developing well into a person's mid-20s. So think about it. When you hand a smartphone to a 10 or 11-year-old, you're exposing a brain that hasn't even built its natural self-regulation defenses yet to the ultimate instant gratification machine.
I mean, think about how hard it is for us adults to focus. Now, imagine a developing child. Constant task switching and those endlessly curated social media feeds severely impact them neurologically. First off, constant notifications just shatter attention spans, making it so much harder for kids to sustain the focus they need for deep learning or just reading a book. Second, because screen time often replaces real, in-person interaction, kids miss out on crucial nonverbal cues, like subtle facial expressions and tone of voice, which can lead to underdeveloped empathy. Third, constantly comparing themselves to the curated highlight reels of everyone else leads straight to emotional dysregulation and anxiety. And finally, relying on a phone for instant entertainment actively hinders the development of those independent problem-solving skills that usually come from unstructured, creative play.
So the crucial point is exactly how these devices hijack the brain's chemistry. The adolescent brain is incredibly sensitive to dopamine. That's the neurotransmitter responsible for pleasure and reward. And these apps, they are explicitly engineered by some of the smartest people on Earth to trigger dopamine spikes with every single ping, like, and notification. This completely overstimulates the brain's reward system. Early exposure to this constant, non-stop stream of digital rewards can actually prime the brain for addictive behaviors, conditioning the user to compulsively check their phone and even leading to very real withdrawal symptoms when the device is taken away.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. How to protect yourself.
All right, we've defined the problem, exploring both the physical radiation and those much more pressing cognitive impacts. Now let's look at highly actionable, science-backed solutions. Based on brain development science, here is a chronological guide. If you have children or teens in your life, step 1 is easily the most impactful. Delay introducing a smartphone until ages 15 to 16. Giving that prefrontal cortex a few extra years to mature equips the adolescent with far better impulse control to handle digital pressures. Step 2, strictly limit daily screen time to protect those precious attention spans. Step 3, highly encourage face-to-face, in-person interactions so they develop genuine empathy and emotional intelligence. And step 4, promote unstructured hands-on play, which is absolutely vital for building creative problem-solving skills.
Now, as a genuinely helpful caveat for anyone still wanting to play it completely safe regarding the physical radio frequency radiation, despite all that reassuring human data, the FDA actually provides some highly practical tips. You can vastly increase the distance between your head and the antenna just by using speaker node or a headset. In fact, wireless Bluetooth headsets use short-range signals that transmit at power levels 10 to 400 times lower than the cell phone itself. You can also simply choose to text instead of talking. Oh, and try to avoid making calls when you have a weak signal, because phones actually boost their radio frequency transmission power to search for a tower when reception is poor. Good to know, right?
So, we've seen that the decades-old fear of cell phone hardware causing physical harm doesn't really align with the vast majority of human data. But the software, the apps, the notifications, the infinite scroll, that poses a very real, scientifically documented threat to developing brains. It leaves us with a profound question to evaluate. Is the convenience of a smartphone today worth the cognitive cost of tomorrow? It's something for all of us to think deeply about as we manage our own and our family's relationship with these incredibly powerful devices. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep staying curious.